babysitters that need to leave. They don't have a backup mate who can watch for them. Their lives are very, very stressful.
There's just never enough hours in the day. I can't get everything done.
I personally don't have the energy to be a mother and father.
I'm Steve Aubrey. Raising children in today's hectic environment is a challenge. And for a single mother or father, raising kids alone can seem overwhelming. Where can single parents turn for help? And what can people of faith do to assist single parents? Stay tuned as we look at meeting the challenges of single parenting. Richard Louv is a journalist and author of The Web of Life, Weaving the Values That Sustain Us.
In America, 60% of all poor families with children are headed by single parents. When you look at the admissions to institutions of mental health, the number of children that go into the very high percentage had no father around when they were kids. Same with juvenile justice facilities and prisons. Very high percentage, there was no father around. Lots of kids of single parents turn out great, turn out just as well or better than their counterparts in families that have two parents. The odds are tough though. The logistics are very, very difficult. When I was interviewing people for one of my books, parents across the country, I interviewed about 3,000 parents and children across the country. I kept trying to find a group of single parents that I could interview, and it was exceedingly difficult. Only after 3,000 of these interviews, interviews with individuals in these groups, did I find a group of single parents. They're all over the place, of course, but the logistics are impossible. I mean, they've got babysitters that need to leave. They don't have a backup mate who can watch for them. Their lives are very, very stressful.
We have to have a lot of juggling, a lot of organization in the mornings. I mean, I'm busy from like 6 o'clock in the morning until about 8 o'clock at night. And then finally, by the time they go to bed, I might get, an hour to try and get the bills together or whatever personal things I have to take care of, so it can be really hectic, and I have kids in 2 different schools right now.
Single parents, more than other types of parents, do a lot of time tricks. I remember one single parent telling me, and I'll read from the quote here, she said, "I do everything at night." She said, "I do everything at night. I wait until they're in bed, and then I clean all I can until late at night, and then I get up early and I start all over again."
There's usually some sort of homework problem. There's dogs and cats that have to be dealt with. There's dinner. There's grocery shopping. I just don't have enough hours in the day. That's all. If I didn't have to sleep, it might be better, but there's just never enough hours in the day. I can't get everything done.
Many of them do something I call time compacting. One of the single mothers that I talked to said that she never does just one thing at a time around the house. And she said, "When I'm cooking dinner, my daughter sits on the counter next to the microwave and we can talk. That's a time when we can talk. When she's in the tub, I'll jump in and join her and we can talk. And when I vacuum the house, I put her on the vacuum. She likes to ride the vacuum, and that's a time when we can talk." As she pointed out, once they get past 5 years old, it's tough to put them on the vacuum to find time to talk. But that illustrates, I think, the kind of pressure that parents find, all parents, but particularly single parents, to get enough time with their kids.
I basically have put off almost everything of mine that, I'd like to do. I mean, eventually I'd like to go on a cruise. I'd like to have a new car. I'd like to live in a nice house. But when you've got, a small amount of money to work with and you've got all the mouths to feed, you just have to put all that aside and know that the clothes are more important, and, getting them back and forth to school and getting them to brownies or baseball. I mean, because, when you're a parent, you put everything aside for your kids.
The logistics are such that it's just impossible for most single parents, not all, but for most, to obtain the kind of material and career objectives that they might want to, at least now. It doesn't mean they can't do it later, but some dreams can survive if they are deferred.
I've had to pull out of school for several years. I look forward to getting back to school. Fortunately, managed to finish my associate's degree before the split, but there's no way that I could attend school at this point. Figuring a couple years, we'll see what arrangements can be made. but it's kind of, it does put a halt on everything for a little while.
Single parents feel this incredible isolation, partly because of the economics. Now, not all single parents have economic problems, but many of them do. And I remember one hairdresser telling me that she made $800 a month, and to find child care for her kids would cost $500 or $800 a month, typically. And she was very glad that she had a school that had a sliding scale rate that allowed her, that had a child care that took care of her kid. If you can't get decent daycare, how are you going to do any of those things? How are you going to get the another degree? How are you going to go to school? How are you going to get the training? How are you going to go to a job interview at a company that is going to treat you better and give you more flexibility?
There's programs out there, but the waiting list is so long sometimes that you just have to juggle for a year, you know, even 2 years sometimes before you can get something stable. Fortunately for me, I have a good friend that takes care of my children, and she's, you know, I've known her for a long time, but I want to get on the program so that it's even cheaper.
It's important to note that it's not only women who are single parents. There are a lot of men out there who are single fathers. In fact, single father families are the fastest growing type of family in the country right now. Proportionally, it's still very small, but they're growing fast. Single fathers tend to be even more isolated in their parenting than single mothers. Not only because the support network, the web of support, is not easily accessible, because it's not easily accessible for mothers either, but because men typically or historically have not found it as easy to weave that web of support socially.
It's much more accepted for a single mother of, say, 2 children than a single father of 2 children. You hear about this and it's like, whoa, so something's wrong with the story here. You know, an easy way to put it is you never saw 3 ladies and a baby, did you? No, you saw 3 men and a baby. It was a rather unusual kind of story. It's still not socially accepted. It's getting better for us as guys. But there's still a stigma that gets put on just because you're a man taking care of a baby.
I don't think it's any more difficult unless you let it be. I think society is starting to accept single fathers a lot more. There's definitely a lot more of us out there. And I think it's a change for the better. It's nice to feel a little bit of respect for what I'm doing and the effort that it takes. If anything, I'd almost say single mothers have it harder. You know, they're just income-wise and some of the stigma that's surrounding single moms now is, from my experience, been making it a little bit harder on them.
There's a lot of folks talking about wanting to bring back a stigma, not toward the kid, but toward the parents. They want to reintroduce the idea of shame. You hear that a lot now. I think that is a dead-end road, and we don't need to go down that road. We don't need to shame people for the kind of family that they have.
One of the things I see about single parents is there's so many of them now. And by the year 2000, there'll probably be more single parents and step-parents than there were regular nuclear family parents.
Dr. Clifford Listog is pastor of Hope Lutheran Church in San Diego and a licensed marriage, family, and child counselor.
In this church, I sense the single parents are very assertive. And so the family is protected. So if it's a single parent, it's a single parent family. And they're not allowed, people I sense that would come in and just see, you know, a nuclear family as a family, soon find out, wait, you're leaving us out. A family as a family. It doesn't have to be a nuclear family. And it can be just as strong, just as nurturing. It's wonderful to see that kind of assertiveness, that where children or single moms don't allow themselves to not be defined as a family.
Some single parents, many of them in fact, feel that single parenting may be preferable. Certainly it's preferable to being in a marriage where you're getting beat up. But some single parents told me that they like it because there's no interference. They don't have to, you know, have a caucus with their mate about how they're going to raise Johnny.
When I make a decision, I have to live with it. I can't blame anybody else anymore.
Me being a single parent, I'm much harder on my kids. I'm not as lenient as two-parent family is. So I'm going to, I put the rules down a lot harder.
I personally don't have the energy to be a mother and father. I feel that the most important thing for me to do is be a consistent father. You know, my son knows I'm dad, and I always will be dad. I'll never be mom.
One of the hardest things, the kids ask me about their daddy a lot, you know, and from time to time I have to give them information but not tell them as much because, you know, their dad is totally out of the picture and doesn't really want to be there.
I wish she had a female in her life that could pick up that slack and show her what it is to be feminine. There are other women in her life that help, but they're still not quite a mom. Moms are special. Moms need to be there, little girls and boys.
I think it's important for single parents not to feel they have to be two parents in one. So they're trying to be a mother and a father. That's not fair to a single parent. A single parent means to be the best parent they can be, not be something beyond that. So it's very important that they don't get into some perfectionist mode. I have to be the perfect super mom, dad. No, but I have to be the best mom, the best dad that I can be.
Sesame Street did a study a few years ago where they asked children what was a family. And it was very, very clear that the children, the small children, did not define family by what kind of configuration it was, whether there were two parents and two kids or whatever. They did not define it that way. They defined it as the presence of love. They said very clearly, these children, that if it's two parents and two kids, 2.5 kids and two parents, and there's no love in that family between the parents, then that is not a family. The kids are very clear about that. I think kids are very wise about these things. A family can be one mother or one father and children. It can be one parent, children, and a network of caring, dependable friends. It can be one child left, the last genetic bearer, grown now, with the relatives and ancestors framed and on the wall. Do we wish to tell this man or woman who has no living relatives left that he or she has no family? A family exists specifically in the spirit and nowhere else. Single parents who are successful parents have decided that early on that they're going to make the children the central focus of their lives, not their work, not their career, not their friends even, but the children are going to be the central focus of their lives. That's true of all parents, of course, but I think it's particularly crucial for single parents because there's no backup.
I had a lot of dreams. I had a lot of things I like to do. I know that people have said, what do you do in your spare time? What do you do for you? And I have a hard time remembering that.
You have to have some type of personal life besides your family and your children, because if that's the only thing you concentrate on, you know, you get so burnt out on it that eventually you just become a vegetable sitting at home just taking care of kids and going to work, and that's all you do.
And then what can happen to a single parent is they can squeeze out their own life. So they're busy with their career or their children, and they can lack self-care. So they kind of can pulverize their own inner growth and spiritual, mental, and physical. So it's an unusual challenge for a single parent. I think there needs to be a lot of affirmation for single parents. I don't think the church and the synagogue that we've really done enough yet. I really don't feel we've affirmed and embraced the single parent.
When I first got divorced, I got really involved in my church, which is it's a fantastic, awesome church, don't get me wrong. But all the people that I was associated with, they were married and they had kids. And it was like, you know what, and they loved me and I loved them and my kids and everything, but it was at a point where something's not right here. You know, this is not, I don't feel fit here.
If you're surrounded by all these happily married people, your life becomes kind of disgusting because you don't, you know, you're around all these people that have nothing in common with you, and they don't understand the same type of struggles that you're going through, you know. So, I mean, you've got to think about your children and you've got to think about your family, but more importantly, you've got to think about having that emotional support.
A lot of times single parents think that they're doing a lousy job because they don't talk to other parents and find out that they're not the only one who's fighting the Nintendo war and losing. You know, they're not the only one who felt like hitting their kid last week. It's one of the reasons it's so important for churches and synagogues and daycares and schools to set up some kind of support network for parents, support groups. providing child care, by the way, to get the parents in one room, particularly single parents, to find out that they're not the only one having those problems.
The answer for me is to have at least 8 to 10 people from, combined from the church, a synagogue, community, friends, relatives, that are people for me that have their PhD in common sense. In other words, they're very grounded. So when a child says, well, other kids in the neighborhood allow me to stay out till 11, you've got this 8 to 10 say, wait, our family doesn't do that. We're not a part of that. So that a single parent has a lot of support then and discipline coming from a very sound, common sense support group around them.
As single parents, Christine, Linda, Norman, and John are all actively involved in Parents Without Partners, a support group with over 60,000 members nationwide.
It's kind of amazing. There's very few resources for single parents out there as far as support groups and activities. And there's 200 singles clubs if I want to go dancing and romancing, but there's very little out there where I can take my child. Especially having him in daycare all day, I don't like to give up my nights and my weekends. It's, my priority is my son on those times. Unfortunately, being 28, there's very few people my age who want to take on a 2-year-old. So I just reached out the only place I knew, which was Parents Without Partners, and was very fortunate to find a good, solid core group of people who are in the same situation and understand what I'm going through and are supportive of my actions.
All these people here have the same thing I have in common. We're all parents without partners, whether we're divorced, widowed, or a single parent. It doesn't matter. We're all the same. And their kids are just like my kids. If I've gone through something with my child and I see someone else going through it, then I can kind of like, they can lean on me or I can lean on them, and I can learn something from what they're going through, or they can learn something through what I've gone through. So we all kind of like help each other out.
I remember sitting in one classroom with a group of single mothers, and they talked about how they bartered services. Again, they didn't just come together to talk about their problems. They actually would help each other. They would spell each other, give each other respite babysitting. They would help each other economically by bartering goods and services. Everybody's good at something or has something that can be traded. One reason I think that all parents are beginning to realize that they need each other, that other parents are always the best experts. Not necessarily that wall of books on the wall that all have the same title, I'm okay as a parent and you're not. Really, other parents are often the best experts to turn to. They don't always know the right answers, but they always know the right questions. And in asking those questions, we feel less alone as parents. That's particularly important for single parents.
I used to have like hopes of being remarried and having that house again with a picket fence around it and the daddy for my kids, but now it's like I've changed all that. It's like it's okay that I'm a single parent because I have the support of others in my group.
A single mom does not need to be rescued. They're really doing a good job. A single father does not need to be rescued. What they need is a partner. What they need is a soulmate. And so if they're looking for a soulmate, then that's wonderful. If they're looking for somebody to rescue them, it's easy to get into being a victim and feeling sorry for yourself and whining about the situation. And then I think it's somebody coming in that's not helpful, because then you have a situation of a stepmom or a stepdad, which is probably the second greatest family conflict situation outside of money problems to deal with in any family.
I pray a lot to, get the help that I need, because I know that some higher power than myself is watching over and helping us, and it's good to have that, to know, just to have someone else that's more in control of the situation, because a lot of times when you're a single parent, you feel like you have no control over anything.
Lauren Hunton is active in Mothers in Touch International, a Christian ministry that brings women together to pray for their children and their schools.
Because we don't chat, we have a format, the Thanksgiving format, where we give thanks in prayer, and at that time people can bring out answer to prayer, and there's a lot of Thanksgiving in the Moms in Touch groups. Moms in Touch allows you to see God working in ways that I don't think you otherwise see Him working. I can see Him working in people, a group of 10 women and their families and each of their children. I can see how He's answering prayer. Moms in Touch is a place that you can see God and through that have hope and peace. And I think that is the promise that Jesus brings to us. That's the peace that He brings to us. I don't think that He promised an easy walk in life. There's no quick fix for those really hard days. There's nothing that's going to help a lot of those days just instantly be better. You can't do it with vitamins, you can't do it with drugs, you can't do it with a fast-paced life. You can't do it by escaping to the bars. What I'm really doing here is fighting a spiritual battle. What's really going on here is a spiritual battle. And there's going to be a winner and there's going to be a loser. And where do I want my child to be and where do I want me to be for all the rest of eternity? That helps you really put it all into perspective.
On our faith journey, we're all children of God. And what that means for a single parent, as I look at it, you can distinguish between wants and needs. Now, a child out there may want all the new toys, and that can almost crush a single mom because they're so expensive. But a child may not need that because they've already got their sense of worth in their faith, in their God, as a child of God.
I do see my children's faith growing. I see their belief growing. I think that comes from them seeing a modeling in me, first of all. I think that it comes from, well, I think first of all it comes from God giving them the ability to have their hearts opened and their minds opened to Him. To those parents, whether it's moms or dads, that are single, that are harried, the first step is prayer. The first step is putting all of your cares and concerns on the one person that can help you and that will help you and that's just waiting for you to ask.
The challenge of single parenting isn't something God expects us to struggle with in isolation. There's support to be found from family, friends, church, and community, which can all make a critical difference in the lives of single parents and their children. If you're a single parent, the Lord wants more than anything else for you to rely on Him. Trust God to meet your needs, like the psalmist in the Bible did when he wrote, "You, Lord, are all I have. You give me all I need. My life is in your hands." Remember, God loves you.